Welcome back to Life's a Blog. Trina here. I have had an interesting week. So much so, I'm late on my podcast, which doesn't impress me, but actually it's been bittersweet. Sweet because I got to spend time with family this weekend. Bitter because, there's some bitterness happening, but, I have to say, before I start this episode, that I think going on no contact and deleting everything, Spotify, everything that was such a challenge with my breakup, that I've learned to handle things in a much more professional and business-like manner, which I'm very proud of myself because I'm not allowing emotion to trump the logic. And that's been my weekly, my weekly aha moment, I guess you'd say. And I just feel that even though life right now couldn't be more challenging, it's actually good. It's very good. So if you're new here, this is a space where we talk honesty about healing, grief, relationships, and the songs that help us make sense of what we have lived through. Every song has a story, and every story has a song. I'm going to start today with something small but very telling. Over the last little while, I've been going back to where I used to live, working on a little project, and a few times I had to pass my ex's place, and I noticed he's never there. A few months ago, that would have stung like hell. I would have read into it. I would have felt replaced, forgotten, or even pushed aside. But this time, something different happened. I sat with it, and I sat with this feeling of calm that I never quite realized I had inside of me. And then I realized that he likely got what he always wanted. To be with the person he wanted, to have someone there at night, someone to talk to, watch TV with, and sleep beside. That mattered to him deeply when we were together for 5 years. And once I saw it clearly, I actually smiled. Not because it didn't hurt once. It did. But because I'm no longer attached to being the one. We spend so much of our time convincing ourselves that we are the right person, the chosen person, the one who should have been enough. But the truth is, that's still just an opinion. And the opinion is ours. People choose based on their own needs, wounds, timing, and capacity, not on our worth. If he has what he was always searching for, I can genuinely be happy for him now. And what I also know is this. I was very much the person I'm about to talk about. The one who stayed, the one who hoped, the one who tried to love somebody into capacity. That realization is what led me to something I read recently. It was a series of Substack essays written by a man called the Horse Whisperer, reflecting on the end of a relationship that was very public, and that's how I went down the rabbit hole of reading about it. On the surface, our lives could not look more different. Different circumstances, different visibility, different worlds. But when I stripped all of that away, what remained felt deeply familiar. Not the details, the dynamic. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee how closely it mirrored my own experience in romantic relationships. What stood out most in his writing wasn't heartbreak or blame. It was restraint. There was sadness, yes, but there was also clarity. The kind of clarity that arrives after you've exhausted every way of explaining, fixing, or understanding someone else. He loved this person deeply. That was never in question. What became undeniable was that love wasn't the issue. Capacity was. The capacity to self-regulate, the capacity to take accountability, the the capacity to repair after harm, the capacity to sit with discomfort instead of deflecting it. That realization landed hard for me because I have lived inside relationships where love was real, empathy was present, and effort existed, but most of the time on one side. For a long time, I believed that if I loved harder, stayed calmer, explained better, or showed more understanding, things would eventually stabilize. What I understand now, with more gentleness toward myself, is this: empathy cannot replace capacity. You cannot love someone into emotional responsibility. You cannot patience someone into accountability. You cannot explain someone into readiness. And staying longer does not make someone more capable of meeting you. When you are emotionally aware and willing to do the work, it is very easy to become the regulator in a relationship. You hold your space, you absorb volatility, you anticipate reactions, you manage tone, timing, and emotional fallout. At first, this can look like maturity, even it can feel like love. But over time, something shifts. Softly, without realizing it, the relationship stops being mutual. It becomes a system where one person stabilizes and the other destabilizes. One person monitors the emotional temperature while the other moves freely inside of it. That is not partnership. That is emotional labor without reciprocity. And the cost of that imbalance doesn't always show up immediately. It shows up later in anxiety and defensiveness, exhaustion and self-doubt. It shows up in how your body braces before conversations, in how you rehearse what you're going to say, in how you soften yourself to avoid conflict. Your nervous system often knows long before your heart is ready to accept it. In reading that essay, it forced me to look honestly at how I showed up in my own relationships, especially with my ex-husband and my ex-partner. I was a mess. Not in a dramatic way, in a nervous system way. Sometimes dramatic too. In a constantly bracing, trying to hold it together while quietly unraveling way. I reacted from fear, from grief, from unresolved loss layered on top of relational instability. With my ex-husband, I learned how easy it is to abandon yourself to keep connection. I confused intensity with intimacy. I mistook urgency for closeness. My nervous system was always on high alert. I overexplained. I overaccommodated. I ignored my own internal alarms because staying connected felt more important than staying grounded. I also held on to a version of him that wasn't real. I saw him as an everybody loves Raymond character. Familiar, harmless, predictable. Someone I could soften around, and when reality broke through that image, I didn't respond with clarity. I reacted with anger. Not because I was volatile, but because I was being forced to reconcile two completely different truths. Who he actually was versus who I needed him to be in order to stay with him. That image I clung to wasn't truth. It was a facade. Much like the woman described in that Substack series. The connection relied on a carefully constructed exterior. Not necessarily out of malice, but out of avoidance. A performance that made closeness feel possible until reality kept interrupting it. I wasn't reacting to who he truly was. I was reacting to the collapse of the story I'd been telling myself. And like the writer of that piece, I eventually had no other choice but to leave. Staying meant absorbing the impact of a narrative that wasn't honest. I was becoming the place where the tension landed so the story presented to the outside world could remain intact. The more I questioned what wasn't adding up, the more I felt positioned as the problem instead of the inconsistency being addressed. That dynamic isn't sustainable. When someone is committed to maintaining a version of reality that doesn't match their behavior, someone else inevitably becomes the container for that distortion. In this case, that someone was me. Leaving wasn't dramatic, it wasn't impulsive, it was self-preservation. I didn't walk away because I stopped caring. I loved him so much. I walked away because continuing to stay meant participating in something that required me to deny my own reality. Now, with my recent ex-partner, I've had so many lovers in the last few years, I'm telling you, I've had my husband and another dude and this ex-partner, so I'm not really a relationship expert, but the lesson looked different, but landed in the same place. There was love, there was care, there was hope. There was a lot of Yahtzee, too. What was missing was consistent accountability. Repair came late, if at all. I stayed because I believed that understanding would eventually lead to change. But we were also living inside two very different belief systems. I believe that what is in the past belongs in the past, that you learn from it, integrate it, and move forward without dragging it into the present. He didn't share that view. He kept returning to the past, revisiting it, reshaping it, and allowing it to inform the present in ways that made forward movement impossible. That difference mattered more than I realized at the time. You just can't build a future with someone who keeps relocating themselves emotionally backward. No amount of patience or clarity can compensate for fundamentally opposing orientations towards time, growth, and responsibility. I thought understanding his perspective would eventually bridge that gap, and it didn't. Because this wasn't a communication issue. It was a worldview mismatch. And that, more than anything, made repair unsustainable. In both relationships, my reactions were information. I was anxious because there was inconsistency. I was defensive because I wasn't emotionally safe. I was exhausted because I was carrying more than my share of the emotional load. Those reactions weren't flaws, they were data. And as I shared before, my life could probably not be at its best right now. It's not at its worst because I've went through worse, but it's pretty serious. It's serious. That's how my life is at this point right now. And it's not an exaggeration. It's an honest assessment of loss, pressure, and transition all happening at once. And yet, oddly, I'm handling it exceptionally well. I'm so proud of myself. Not because it hurts less, not because it matters less, but because I'm no longer letting everything and everyone have access to me. Therapy didn't make me tougher. It made me clearer. It gave me filters. When things get hard, those filters activate automatically. They show me who is supportive, who is neutral, and who is quietly toxic. I now notice how my body responds to people, who steadies me, who unsettles me, which conversations leave me regulated, and which leave me bracing. The people who matter don't drain me. They don't escalate my stress. They don't ask me to manage their emotions on top of my own. They challenge me towards health, not chaos, towards accountability and not self-abandonment. This is how toxicity loses its grip. Not through confrontation, not through overexplaining, but through selective access. And the crazy thing that I've learned in the last 2 months is that I put so much emotions into an argument or a discussion, and I didn't stick to the facts. Now, both of my issues are with people that are very business oriented and have issues, and I've taken the emotions out and I've taken a business approach to both issues. I don't know if I could do that in my personal life right now, but I feel like I've had a few instances with my children, for example, And I'm quite proud of how I handled it. It's just honesty with a little bit of feeling, but with a lot of openness on how I want to solve the problem and not fight, but discuss it rather than be combative. And I feel it's worked. I can honestly say something that once would have confused me. I'm actually happy in my despair. Not because the circumstances are easy, they aren't, but because my responses now match my reality I'm living in. I'm no longer bracing for impact. I'm no longer managing other people's reactions to my truth. Therapy did give me alignment. My emotions make sense now. Sadness shows up when something is sad. Anger shows up when a boundary is crossed. Calm shows up when there's nothing left to prove. I've let go of relationships that made me hypervigilant and defensive. Relationships that trained my nervous system to stay on guard. Not because I was difficult, but because I wasn't safe. I'm actually softer now because I'm no longer under constant emotional threat. And while my communications remain steadfast in a very business-like fashion that may appear to some as unemotional, narcissistic, or combative, it's just business. It's just business. Every relationship is a business. And the more you're able to focus on the reality of the fact rather than fighting the past, the emotions, and the outcome, and just talk about the reality of it, you'll find your way through faster. And that's freedom. For this episode, I'm not even going to try to dare play a song because I've been flagged a few times. The song that kept coming back was The Pretender by Jackson Browne. This song isn't written from the middle of chaos. It's written from the moment after clarity arrives. It's about people who looked functional, sound reasonable, and move through life doing all the right things while avoiding the deeper work that intimacy actually requires. Comfort over confrontation. Performance over present. I wasn't in relationships where everything was obviously broken. I was in relationships where everything looked fine enough to stay. And that's the trap. This song reflects the moment when you stop asking why someone can't meet you and start accepting that they simply aren't built for the depth you require. Love was present. Effort existed on one side, but capacity was missing. The song doesn't accuse, it observes. And that's where I am right now. I get kind of a giggle because I did say a little bit of conversing on Facebook dating and actually that experience of just chatting with people about dating or prospective future partners makes me giggle because there's one guy that says, I'm in Hamilton, that's far. And I'm like, well, not really. And he goes, well, he goes, I don't drive. And I said, well, I don't drive, that's a deal breaker. And I said, well, you know what my deal breaker is? Not being able to get creative because you don't drive. So that's my little funny of the week. It's kind of pat myself on the back with that, figuring out, okay, I want someone that's going to be sporadic and say, hey, let's go now, let's do this. And so yeah, Facebook dating is interesting in that because most of these dudes are just either after one thing or they just have excuses for everything. So if you're listening to this and recognizing yourself somewhere in these words, I want to say this clearly. You're not weak for loving deeply. You're not broken for staying too long. You're not wrong for hoping that someone would meet you where you stood. But love isn't the same as capacity, and discernment isn't about abandonment. You can love someone and still recognize that they're not safe to build with. You can understand someone's wounds without volunteering to be collateral damage. You can walk away without villainizing either one of you. Some relationships end not because love disappears, but because reality finally becomes undeniable. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop trying to save what cannot meet you, where you stand. And then you put it in the past. You learn from it. You sit with it. You sit with the pain. You sit with the loss. You sit with all those feelings that you have when you have a broken heart. And one day, what you want, what you need, that person who will meet you where you stand will appear. But until then, just accept yourself for who you are. Love yourself. Give yourself grace and time to really, truly love yourself. To never step into the path of being with that wrong person. Because you deserve so much more. So thank you for listening. And as always, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at lifesablogca, or you can check out my little antics on TikTok. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope I can be on time next week, which would be this Thursday. And we'll give it a shot. I have a lot of great ideas to talk about. I'm going through such a transition in my life right now, and it's very exciting. It's terrifying, but it's very exciting. Because within a few weeks, I'm hoping to have a place by the water in the wintertime. And then be on the lake for the summer. Take care.